One of the most subtle and exhausting ways we beg for love is by becoming indispensable. You don't say, "Please don't leave me." You say, "Let me do that for you." You offer rides. You fix problems. You remember birthdays. You keep the house running, the group chat organized, the little emergencies soothed before anyone even notices. And if you're honest with yourself, it's not just kindness, it's currency. You're trading effort for affection, hoping that if you're useful enough, you'll earn a place in someone's life. It's especially common for people who grew up around conditional care, where love was tied to performance, obedience, or helpfulness. Somewhere along the way, you learned that being easy to love wasn't about being yourself. It was about being needed. So you turn yourself into Swiss Army knives. You don't rest until everyone else is okay. And when someone thanks you, or even just stays a little longer because of you, you feel a tiny flicker of safety, like, maybe I've bought myself one more day of being wanted. But the truth is, usefulness doesn't guarantee love. It just distracts from the deeper fear that without all the helping, you'd be left behind. And that fear keeps you stuck in a cycle of overgiving until one day you realize you've done everything for everyone, and no one really sees you at all. Sometimes, the way we ask for love is by trying to be unforgettable. You carve out a personality like a sculpture, precise, unusual, a little different from everyone else. Maybe you become the deep one, the weird one, the artist, the rebel, the one with the niche music taste or offbeat sense of humor. On the surface, it looks like authenticity, and often it is, but it's also strategy. You subconsciously decide, if I'm irreplaceable, they'll have to keep me. You cultivate uniqueness like armor. You become a type. You refine it over years. And when people notice you, admire you, want to know more, it soothes something raw inside. But if they don't, if you go unnoticed, it stings twice as hard. Not just because you're rejected, but because you tried so hard to be unforgettable. For many, this pattern starts young, when you had to find your own way of standing out to get any attention at all. It might have worked then. But as an adult, it can make you feel like love is something you have to earn by being interesting enough. When really, being seen shouldn't have to come at the cost of being seen through a performance. You deserve love for who you are, not just for the version of yourself you've carefully crafted to be worth remembering. Some people subtly beg for love by pretending they don't need it. You become stoic, calm, unbothered, hyper-capable, even when something hurts. Not because you don't feel pain, but because you secretly hope someone else will notice it without being told. It's like, if I'm quiet about it, maybe someone will care enough to ask. Maybe they'll see through the silence. Because asking directly, that feels unsafe, too exposed. So you get good at looking fine, sometimes even impressive, while secretly craving to be read. You want someone to see the sadness in your restraint, to recognize the discipline it takes to hide how bad you're hurting, and to care because of it. It's a paradox. You long to be understood without having to explain yourself. But stoicism, for many of us, began as survival. As kids, maybe crying didn't bring comfort. Maybe it brought shame, or worse, rejection. So you learned to look strong. And now, it's like you're still waiting for someone to break through that wall, look you in the eye and say, "You don't have to do this alone." But the longer you play stoic, the more people believe you're fine, and the more invisible the hurt becomes. Wanting to be noticed without asking isn't weak. It's human. But the tragedy is when your silence hides you from the very care you need. Sometimes we beg for love by disappearing into other people's needs. You become hyper-attuned, always asking, "Are you okay? Do you need anything? Did I do something wrong?" You anticipate moods, shrink your preferences, and bend yourself in quiet ways so no one ever feels uncomfortable around you. To others, it can look like kindness. But deep down, it's often fear. A fear that if you're too much, too messy, too inconvenient, you won't be loved. So you make yourself the safest possible person. Predictable, generous, easy to be around. You absorb tension, you smooth things over, and then you hope, silently, that someone will notice. That they'll think, "Wow, they really care about me. I want to care for them too." But it doesn't always work like that. Because when you always accommodate, you train people not to look beneath the surface. They stop asking how you feel. You become the strong one, the helper, the good friend. Not the person someone worries about, checks in on, or fights to keep close. And ironically, the more invisible your needs become, the lonelier you feel. Sometimes, overgiving isn't just love. It's an unspoken cry. Please don't leave. Please notice how much I'm trying to matter. But real love doesn't require constant proving. And you're allowed to take up space, even if it risks being inconvenient. Another quiet way we beg for love is by trying to fix people. You listen deeply, offer advice, carry their pain like it's your own. You take on the role of healer, the therapist friend, or rescuer, not because you're superior, but because on some level you're hoping, if I help them enough, maybe they'll stay. Maybe they'll love me back. Maybe they'll see how good I am. Sometimes it starts young. Maybe you were the one who had to stay calm while someone else fell apart. Maybe you learned that if you could just fix what was broken, in others, in the room, in the mood, things would finally feel safe. So now, you scan people for wounds. You lead with compassion. You feel drawn to the people who need saving, not because you're naive, but because you've been taught love is something you earn. But here's the truth. Fixing someone isn't the same as being close to them. Helping isn't the same as being chosen. And people don't always love you more just because you understand them. The sadness is, we often give to others what we most wish someone would do for us. Let me see your pain so I can stay with it, so you don't have to be alone. But you deserve someone who does that for you too. Not just someone you can heal, but someone who makes you feel healed too. Sometimes, love doesn't feel like something we get. It feels like something we win. So you chase gold stars, a perfect GPA, a flawless image. You stay busy, stay impressive, stay on. You become a performer, not always on stage, but in life. You strive to be outstanding, put together, exceptional. And on the surface, it looks like confidence. But underneath, it's often this quiet hope. If I shine bright enough, maybe someone will finally see me. If I'm impressive enough, maybe I'll be worth keeping. Because sometimes the earliest version of love we were given came with conditions. Love if you succeed. Love if you don't disappoint. So you start trying to earn it. You become an expert in hiding your fear of not being enough by overperforming. You mistake admiration for connection. But here's the thing. Being loved for your image isn't the same as being loved for yourself. You don't have to be dazzling to be deserving. You don't have to keep performing to stay wanted. The right people will care about you even when you're not achieving, even when you're just there. And that kind of love is quieter, but it's real. Sometimes the way we beg for love is by trying not to need it. You make yourself chill. You say, no worries, even when you're hurt. You say, I'm good, when really you feel forgotten. You try to be easy to love by being easy to handle. You think, if I don't ask for too much, if I'm flexible, agreeable, undemanding, maybe people will stick around. Because deep down you're afraid that if you really showed your needs, your fears, your expectations, they'd leave. Maybe you grew up with people who got overwhelmed when you needed comfort. Maybe you were told you were too much, too sensitive, too dramatic. So now, you try to be self-contained. You go quiet, you brush things off, you pride yourself on being low maintenance. But sometimes that's just code for chronically self-abandoning. It's not that you don't have needs. It's that you've learned to keep them quiet in order to feel safe. But love isn't proven by how little space you take up. You don't have to shrink yourself to be tolerated. The right people won't see your needs as a burden. They'll see them as a doorway, a chance to know you more deeply, to show up for you, to say, you don't have to hold this all alone, because real love doesn't ask you to disappear. Sometimes the way we beg for love is by disappearing into someone else. You become a mirror, reflecting their moods, their values, their preferences, their opinions. You laugh when they laugh, agree when they talk. You listen more than you speak. Not because you have nothing to say, but because deep down, you're afraid that if you really showed up, they might not like what they see. So instead, you become their favorite audience. You shapeshift. You attune. You make yourself a safe space, not for you, but for them. Because maybe growing up, love meant staying out of the way. Maybe it meant reading the room before you could read yourself. And so now, you scan others for cues, searching for who they want you to be. Not consciously, just instinctively. You think, if I'm understanding enough, agreeable enough, empty enough, maybe they'll love me. But here's the thing. If someone falls in love with a version of you that only reflects them, you'll always feel invisible. Connection without authenticity feels more like loneliness with company. You deserve to be more than a mirror. You deserve to exist in your own right, with your thoughts, your emotions, your weird takes, and strong opinions. You're not lovable because you disappear. You're lovable even when you don't. I'll be making more content like this, so subscribe if you want to see it.